Hello everybody, my name is Tanner Kyler, and today I'm in a cactus sanctuary in south central Baja California. I'm going to do a tour of this entire cactus forest, which is very interesting and a unique ecosystem. This cactus sanctuary is privately owned and is similar to a botanic garden. It protects the pristine dry forest ecosystem. This area is about an hour and a half north of Cabo and about an hour south of La Paz, Mexico. It is one of the coolest and most unique places I have ever traveled to and had the pleasure of seeing. The cactus growing in this forest are several hundred years old, and it is very ancient, composed of Stenoceras and Pachyoceras cactus, along with mesquite trees, birds, and many other forms of wildlife. Come with me today to get a tour of one of the coolest cactus sanctuaries I have ever been to and see some of the oldest and healthiest forests in all of the Baja California Peninsula. Alright, we're off the highway now. We're on this small dirt road going to the botanic garden, and there are a lot of really pretty cactus right off the side of the road, so I'll film what I can. I don't know if they're open today, but if they aren't, it looks like we can at least stop here and do some good filming without a lot of traffic interrupting us. That looks crazy. All those cactus growing up underneath the trees. The cactus forest was open, and it cost 200 pesos to enter. Gila woodpecker. Alright, we're in the cactus forest now, and there are cardons everywhere. There's a Stenoceras right here growing. A lot of really cool stuff. We saw some cool hummingbirds. A lot of butterflies too. A lot of insects. I don't know what that is. It looks like it'd be closely related to a boojum. And then there is an old man cactus there. So, this is a species of cactus that is very interesting and has a crazy columnar branching structure. And if you'll pan up to the top, you'll notice these spines here that look somewhat like a beard or an old man's hair. They grow only at the top of the cactus. So this is the old man cactus. Now there are multiple species of old man cactus. There is Cephaloceras senilis, which there are multiple species like I mentioned, and these guys grow in this large branching structure growing here in Mexico, where it is very dry in the dry forest. So if you pan just around, you'll notice that there are a lot of trees along with cactus. So during certain times of year, they get an abundance of rain, which actually boosts it more of a forest than it is a harsh desert. But during the dry season, this area is very barren of leaves and becomes mostly cactus and the trunks of the trees that are dormant during that period. So this old man cactus is probably at least a century old, maybe several. It is very, very large, probably 15, 20 feet wide and about 20, 30 feet tall. It's hard to tell from the ground here. They are offering awesome habitat for a lot of different pollinators. As I was standing here, I actually noticed a bunch of eggs that were laid all over this from some insect here in the forest. They are not the most abundant species here. There are a lot of different species growing all throughout this forest, but this one I've only seen a couple of, and this is a giant specimen here. If you look in very closely, let's get a little closer here, Charles, you can see it has a woody trunk. And so as it gets older, it loses its green chlorophyll-filled branch because it gets shaded down there, and it replaces it for a thick, waxy cuticle layer that protects it from things abrasing it or cutting it open, and it kind of loses its spine. So it does have very small, about 1 centimeter long spines right here, about a half an inch, less than a half an inch spines all up it. So it does offer some protection, but it's not the spikiest cactus of all time. But if you look up at the top, there is definitely a lot of spines growing up there. So these spines offer it protection from the heat, the intense sun. That's why they're only growing at the top. So the parts that are sticking out in the direct sunlight are going to be the species, the top of the plant that is going to, have to battle with the most amount of exposure to the elements like UV, cold, wind, those kind of things. So it's to help protect the plant and keep it from dying and being damaged way up there in the top of the cactus. Really, I just wanted to highlight how beautiful this massive cactus is here. So these guys being desert specialists and being adapted to these very arid desert climates, they have evolved to bloom nocturnally, being pollinated by bats and moths, occasionally opening up during the day for some pollinators like butterflies and bees, but it is best for them to open up at night so they don't lose as much moisture when it's cooler and the moisture is higher in the air. And so they bloom at night with a mix of red, yellow, and white flowers, depending on the specific cactus. As cactus move around, if they're pollinated by hummingbirds, they're going to get more red. If they're pollinated by bats, moths, it's easier to see white at night, so they're going to go towards a yellow or white color. They do grow all throughout Mexico, up through Baja, through central Mexico, and then up into a small portion of the United States. I'm not sure if they were brought in. I think that they are just now starting to spread a tiny bit up into the southern part of Arizona as the range is expanding with things like climate change. They're also being able to move further north because temperatures on Earth are getting warmer, and those areas that they once were not suited for due to the cold are becoming more suitable for this large species of cactus. So, but man, Talon, come walk up next to this cactus. These cactus are huge in this cacti sanctuary here. Walk up next to that one. Yeah, let me get by the sun here. I'm gonna put it in one-time zoom so I can pan up and you can just see how massive this guy is. Very large, probably 20, 30 feet tall. This place, super interesting. Look at this one, it fell over and started growing up a bunch of different columns. Looks like a wall, basically. These are giant right here. There's a big one in there. Today I am bringing you a very unique and cool species of cactus, Stenoceras thunbergii, or the Oregon pipe cactus. These guys have just recently, about 30,000 years ago, actually started moving into southern Arizona. You can go see them in the United States at Oregon Pipe National Monument, but they don't get quite this big. So here in the dry forest, due to competition of sunlight, as you can see there's a lot of trees around here. Here are some drone shots from above that really show how vegetated this area is. So here in the dry forest, there are plenty of trees to help shade and compete with these cactus, which is causing them to get much taller than they would in other parts of the world, especially in more barren deserts. They're forced to grow up in height rather than as wide as they do. These guys get about 20 to 30 feet tall. They love well-draining soils, unless you're in an area like this, which they get very little precipitation. So they can grow in better thicker soils here, but if you're going to be growing them in pots, you definitely want to grow them in a very well-draining soil mix. They are desert specialists, so they do not need much water. These dry forests here receive a lot of precipitation once, maybe twice a year, and then for the rest of the year, it can get bone dry. So 9 months to a couple years could even go by without a drop of water for these guys. So the Stenoceras grows quite large, as you can see. They grow dozens, if not hundreds, of arms, so they're very different from the saguaros or the cardons, the false saguaros. They grow much more based off the ground and much wider than the other ones. So they have a whitish flower that blooms at night. They are bat pollinated, moth pollinated as well, and if they open up during the day every once in a while, then pollinators like butterflies and bees would also pollinate them. But they primarily open up at night, and the reason why they do that is to prevent moisture loss, because it is very dry here, very arid, very sunny. Right now it's about 95 degrees and it's March, so I don't think I'd want to be here in the middle of August whenever the heat rolls in. So these guys' flowers are rather large, about yay big, probably about 2 inches in diameter. Very beautiful, and then they produce a red fruit. Now these guys, that breeze feels amazing. These guys get their name Oregon pipe, as they do look like the pipes of the musical instrument, the organ. These are very slow growing plants, so they grow very slow throughout their lives. So these one here are probably pushing 100 years old, so they live about 150, possibly more years. It is hard to date or age cactus because they do not get growth rings like trees do, so whenever we cut one down, you can't just count the rings to see their age. So as they do get older, they get these very woody trunks, and I'm going to squat down here and point. I don't know if you can see it. If you can maybe zoom in a tiny bit, Talon, you can see that woody cuticle layer. So at the base, they actually will start losing spines towards the base as their cuticle layer gets thick enough to protect themselves. But they do have spines all the way up the cactus. So the spines are rather small, but they are clustered and very hard to get. So on these ribs, they have about 19 to 20 ribs around each of these. And the ribs expand and contract as they get bigger and smaller as they swell full of water in the wet season and then dry up. So the ribs are very similar looking to the saguaro ribs, if you've ever seen those. As the water fills up, they can actually double in size and weight. So they have a very large fibrous root system that probably goes out 20-30 feet all the way around them to catch any precipitation that falls around the plant, soaks up, and then these swollen stems here are like batteries. So cactus are very similar to batteries in the way that they store up all of their energy, all their water, all their nutrients into the stems and the swollen trunks of them, and then over the course of a year or so, if they don't get rain, they slowly deplete that. And if they don't get rain readily enough, they will pass away. So they do not like cold. That's why they only grow in the very southern point of Arizona. Because they don't like cold, they don't like to be hit with any kind of frost. And so if you look up, you'll see their spines are a little thicker at the top to help protect them from frost and cold. But it doesn't get very cold here in Baja. And so these guys probably don't see anything below 40 degrees Fahrenheit or close to 0 degrees Celsius. They definitely do not like the cold, so if you have them and you're growing them in a colder state, like let's say you live in Oregon and you're growing them, you definitely want to bring them in for the winter months. Also, if you're living in a wet state, you want to make sure they're not getting too much precipitation. There is a large tarantula hawk here. Where'd he go? Oh, there he is. He's really red. I don't think I've ever seen one that red. There was a small, weird species of anole I've never seen. There he is. Oh, that's pretty. It's on the base of these cactus here. Okay, keep on moving. See, did you see that, Tails? He just flew away from us. He was scared of us. So tarantula hawk have the second most painful sting of any insect on Earth, roughly. You do not want to get stung. If you get stung on like the arm or the hand, they can actually make your hand go paralyzed and cause excruciating pain for several hours after the sting. So you have to be careful. They use it to sting tarantulas, which then paralyze the tarantula, and then they lay their eggs inside of it so their babies can reproduce. So they're a parasitic wasp, but for the most part, they don't harm humans. If you just don't look at them, don't mess with them, just keep on moving, they won't harm you. You'll see them across a lot of the American Southwest. We have them back in Oklahoma as well. They get bigger down here, though. There were some giant ones I was seeing. Maybe not, but there's definitely more of them here than there are back home. But we have tarantulas back home as well. Barrel-cactus peninsulae. These guys are one of the smaller barrel cactus, but can still get relatively large. They normally get a globular shape, and they have a pinnate symmetrical ring of growth that comes off of them. So they normally get around 20 to 30 ribs a piece, and they can get 30 to 60 centimeters tall. So what is that? So about 2 feet tall, 2 feet wide. These ones are relatively small here. They were recently planted, I do believe, but they are native to Baja Sur. And so they do get flowers that bloom in the summertime. Generally, you'll see them growing on cliff edges and stuff, kind of out by themselves, but here they are in the forest. They get yellowish to orange flowers that bloom in the summer, and they are pollinated by bees and butterflies. Now, their seed pods are one of the most vital things. So they produce large globular seed pods that are actually spineless, and those seeds inside not only help it spread genetically, but many animals that reside here, small rodents and insects and deer and things like that will actually eat the seeds because they contain moisture, and they can help them get water during the drought times of the year. So they are very drought tolerant, can go up to a year, maybe up to 2 years without rain. These forests here do receive a little bit more rain, I do believe, than the Sonoran Desert up in Arizona, but it depends probably from year to year. So these areas get extremely dry for a prolonged amount of times, and then very wet for a prolonged amount of time. So during the rains, they actually probably will double their mass and swell out to absorb a lot of water. That's why they are this shape. So they're basically a barrel in the way that they're meant to absorb and uptake a lot of nutrients. So these barrels are basically giant batteries storing nutrients, glucose, and sugar inside of them that allows them to grow bigger during the different times of the year. So they have spines or ribs within them that can expand and contract. So they get larger during the wet season, and then as it dries out, they'll get smaller and smaller. And if they do not get a resupply of water, they will eventually die. But these guys here look very healthy. It seems a little dry this time of year, but they're still doing good. As I was mentioning, the fruits that are a greenish yellow color, about the size of a grape, a little bit larger than a grape. If we move right over here, this one right here actually has some fruit. So if you'll just move right here, Talon, you can see these have fruits here. And if I put my hand right next to it, you can see they're relatively small. Much smaller than the Pharaoh cactus that grow in Arizona, which are the Arizona barrel cactus, Pharaoh cactus wesleyanii. They get much larger fruits, and they also can get much taller. So they get more of a columnar shape. Now these can get columnar shapes, but they generally try to stay to more of the shape of a golden barrel. So about the size of a beach ball whenever they're fully grown. But very unique, very cool cactus. Definitely don't want to touch it because it does have very razor sharp spines that are much larger than some of the ones we've been seeing here. The spines are about 1 inch to 2 inch long, and they have a hooked curved barb on it. So that's what gives them the name the Pharaoh cactus. So all the barrel cactus in the Pharaoh cactus family have these big, nasty, hooked barbed spines, which actually gave the people who first came here the idea to call them Pharaoh cactus, meaning ferocious. They thought they were very scary looking. So these hooked spines, actually you can touch this way, but if they catch your skin, can rip your skin open very quickly. So if you fall down on one, it is not a good thing. There's also going to be a mild toxin on them, like most cactus, that'll irritate the skin if you are stabbed. And then they also have these side branching spines that come and protect the ribs in here, which are more straight. They're much skinnier and much smaller, more like a 1/2 inch, about 1 centimeter long, whenever these large out-facing spines get about 2 inches long. So they have 2 different sets of spines, which is pretty unique for a cactus. This cactus forest is really stunning. If you look right here, here's Talon in the forest of all these cactus, and isn't that just bizarre? I've never seen an ecosystem quite like this. If you come back here, Talon, we'll take your photo. All right, we're up here at the top on this bird lookout thing. It's about 30 feet off the ground, so we're way up here. And you can actually see the tops of a lot of these cactus as well. That one's actually has a flower on it currently. But this is what it looks like up here. It's very nice. You up here where there's wind. Oh yeah, those flowers right there. He said they were bearded cardons. So they're different species than the cardons that are on the coast. All right, I'm gonna fly the drone around and throw some drone shots in here of the place. As we fly around here, I'm going to talk about what I called the bearded cardon. I asked one of the workers that was there if this was a different species of cardon, and he said yes, but there was a bit of a language barrier. He said they were bearded cardons, which may be one of their other common names. But what they really are Pachyoceras pecten aboriginum, commonly known as the hairbrush cactus or the Indian cone cactus, is a large columnar cactus native to Mexico, named for its fruits, which were traditionally used as a hair cone. It can grow up to 49 feet tall and features deep green stems with white spines and produce nocturnal white flowers, followed by large burr-like edible fruits that resemble a tennis ball in size, shape, and even color. One of the other things that I noticed, and I think is important to note from these drone shots, is that the dry forest is much healthier within the preserve. When I used the drone to move over onto the neighboring side that was not part of the cactus sanctuary, but was rather ranch land, which is grazed by goats and cattle, you notice a substantial loss in vegetation, such as trees like mesquites. There are still plenty of cactus, but many of their young ones will not have the opportunity to make it to their full size and maturity because those trees are nurse trees, which allow the cactus to grow up underneath them, and I will show that later on in the video, to grow up above them one day, but they need shade and protection from predators during their young parts of their life. So if you look around in these drone shots, you can obviously see the land is much more barren than in the previous shots over the cactus forest like I'm showing right now. The drone footage also gave me the ability to get the bird's eye perspective of the largest cactus in the forest, and here I may have found the largest Stenoceras I have ever seen. So this one has hundreds, if not thousands, of branches on it and is definitely several centuries old. lot of really cool endemic species of cactus that live nowhere else on Earth or in very few other places on Earth. And so we're going to be talking about the bearded cardon. So I'm going to throw the Latin name in there. I'm assuming it's Pachyceras as the genus. I don't know the specific epithet, but they are very similar to the cardons, but they seem to like the forested areas a little bit more. So as you can see, all around us, we have mesquite trees growing all in abundance all around us here. And these mesquites are helping shade the ground and allowing for these to grow up. But what they're also doing is pressuring the cactus to have to grow taller. So we are in a dry forest. So this is a forested area, but it is still a desert. And here in this desert, we have a lot of really cool cactus like this one right here, the bearded cardon. And Talon, if you can zoom into those holes onto the side of the cactus here, these are different than the cardons that grow more on the coast, Pachyceras pringlei, but they still are a keystone species here in this forest. So they outnumber the cardons here, but on the coast it's the other way around. And right there you can see those holes. Those are holes that birds have made, and that is where they can lay their eggs, nest, stay cool during the day, also possibly get moisture from the cactus itself. And so if we can reverse roles here and look right over here, they are in bloom. So they only bloom at night though. And so you won't see them blooming, but they have large white flowers with red on the side, and that is to attract bats to help pollinate them, along with other things like moths. But if you can zoom in right there, you can actually see some of the red flowers growing on the top of this cactus. So I'm actually going to get down and show you. We're about 30 feet off the ground right now. So this is about a 30-foot tall bearded cardon. I will, on our way out of here, I'll show you the trunks. So their trunks are very interesting as well, but the tops of them are beautiful. So those large, fuzzy tennis ball, they're about the size of a tennis ball, looking fruits are the fruits of the bearded cardons. They're full of seeds and are kind of covered in something similar to glaucids. So little tiny spines, all of them, to protect the fruit, and then those will disperse all around them. And as we're going down, I'll also show you how many babies grow on the forest floor. So the young adolescent cardons, similar to the saguaros, which need the mesquites to grow up, which are all these leafy trees here, they need them as a nurse. They're called nurse plants. So they allow the baby cardons to grow up as they're maturing, to protect them from the harsh sun here. So it is March right now, and it's about 95 degrees. So we are sweating pretty profusely, but these guys are thriving because they are shaded, because the forest floor is cooler than out in the harsh sun. And so in their adolescence, the moisture is held there. It also keeps animals and other creatures from stepping on them and killing them when they're babies. But the babies will then push up, and once they get about 15, 20 years old, the tops of them will start pushing through the mesquite trees and then push all the way through, and now they can reproduce and then restart the cycle. But they are very interesting trees. So they aren't, or cactus, so they aren't as big as the normal cardons are, and you can see another one right over here. But they do get about 10 meters or 30 feet tall versus the cardons, which can get up to 60 feet and weigh as much as an African elephant. These probably weigh about half of what a mature cardon would weigh, and they're about half as tall as well. So they're more adapted for these mountainous areas that get slightly colder. So now we're gonna climb down out of this aviary tower and go check out one on the ground to show you the trunks of them and some of their babies. So come on with me. I don't know if that's a dwarfed bearded cardon or what that is, but it looks like a barrel of some sort, but I haven't ever seen one like that. Oh, there's another one. So these are also maybe the common barrels? I don't know what these are. They're what those are. Oh yeah, there's a lizard right there in the cactus.
It blends in nice.
So right here we have something really cool. It's a species of cactus. I don't know what kind it is, but it actually has leaves here at the top, and then they lose them as they get older. They're so like succulent, but then they turn into what looks like a pencil cholla. This is the biggest Stenoceros I've ever seen. This thing is huge. Oh, and we got something else really cool in here. In front of two really cool cactus here, but we're going to be talking about the galloping cactus, Stenoceros gummosus. Is that what I said? Okay. It is also known as the creeping devil. So it is very spiny, has about 1 centimeter long spines that come out in bracteoles of about 5, all over it, so it's a very dangerous cactus to fall into or to be around if you're not careful. But it is called the galloping cactus because it starts to grow up and forms these large colonies. It loves salty soil here in the Baja Peninsula. It can grow along on islands and along the coast, but we're actually inland in a forest. I haven't seen a lot of them. This is the first one I've seen today. And it doesn't seem to be doing as good as the ones that are more out in the open. But what we're going to talk about is why it's called the galloping cholla. So as it grows, it bends its arms over vertically and touches the ground and continues growing out propagules. So it'll touch the ground, root into the ground, and then grow laterally rather than vertically. And that allows it to sprout out, and they form these dense clumps, very similar to roses or blackberries in the wild. But what is really cool about it is the back end will die and it'll keep moving. Blackberries also do this, but it gives it the name the creeping devil or the galloping cholla because it looks like it's galloping. And if you come back in a decade, this cactus will be a few feet over there. And if you come back in a century, it might be 10 or 20 feet from where we are standing right here today. So over time they move. So it just has a very interesting name, and it's one of the most interesting looking cactus I've ever seen. It also kind of vines up other plants. I'll show you that here in a second. I'll grab the camera and point it up in here. But it is awesome for habitat for birds, so it forms these dense clusters to keep predators out and allows them to have ground nesting birds to have their eggs on the ground here and have homes low to the ground. They also offer soil stabilization because they can root into the ground very well. I'm not sure what the flowers look like on this, but I do know the fruits are a sour pitaya, which is a delicacy, so they're very delicious fruits. I think I read that it was similar to a watermelon, but more sour, but very delicious, and not the most common thing, so it's something that they treat as a delicacy here in Baja. So this cactus gets about probably 15 feet tall, maybe up to 20 feet tall if it climbs up on something. So this one right here is probably a taller one because it looks about 12 feet tall growing up on top of these trees, but really grows out laterally further. So these clumps can get very large, you know, the size of maybe a basketball court if they're given enough time, or more like a tennis court probably. They can live for several centuries as they grow along. They can continue propagating, and it'll be still the same clone, but it won't, maybe the original cactus won't be here, and so maybe these branches aren't going to live a century, but the plant itself will as it spreads and clones itself along the way, making it a very hardy plant that also can spread through seed. So this is just a very interesting plant that's, I believe, endemic to Baja. I could be wrong. I know it's endemic to Mexico. Here's a giant Stenoceras. I'm going to throw this in the video. I was talking about the Stenoceras. This is the biggest one I've ever seen. Look at how big this monster is. Stenoceras thunbergii. So here is a bearded cardon's trunk here. Oh, and there's a praying mantis. Sorry, I got distracted. Look at that guy. He looks different than the ones we have.
Oh.
Very quick. That's awesome. All right, you can step back now. So this is the trunk of it. So it gets this thick cuticle layer that's very waxy, and they are also called the elephant trunk trees, mostly the larger cardons, but this is a subspecies of the cardon, so the bearded cardon here. And you can see the spines start right about here, but for about 6 feet or 2 meters above the ground, it has a very tough cuticle layer, and it's like bark, if you listen. It's very hard, like wood. And so this offers it protection. It doesn't need spines anymore up here, but when they're young, they have spines all the way up the trunk. Because if you actually just turn around right here, here's another, this is a young bearded cardon right here. So, so like I said, these are keystone species. They're very important. They offer amazing stabilization. About as tall as this plant is, its roots are going out in every direction. So if it's about, this one's about 20 feet tall, its root system goes out in 20 feet radius all the way around it. So very large fibrous root system that holds the soil together. So this one's right here in the middle of the trail and offered it really cool. But if you were to look at the trunk of this, it would look just like a tree. And if you come with me just right over here, we're just going to walk over here. There are a ton of babies growing up, and I'll show you what I mean by the nursery plant. Here's a good spot. So if you look right here, we have a mesquite growing, which are a large thorny tree with a giant root system helping suck water up from way down low and bring it to the surface for also all these babies. And it's offering all this spackled shade down here at the base for hundreds, if not thousands, of baby bearded cardons. This might be the thickest I've ever seen them underneath a tree. As you can see, you know, it'd be difficult for me to walk through here, not because of the cactus. There is a trail right here, but also because of the way that these low-lying branches help protect them from animals tromping through here, knocking them over. Because when they're tiny, you could easily step on them, squish them, and their spines aren't very sharp yet. But as you can see, all of these have spines all the way down to their base, but these are probably only a meter tall, most of them. Some of them are only a few inches tall, a few centimeters tall. But if you see, there are thousands of them, and I'll grab the camera here and flip it around and show you guys. If you look right in here, look at all of those babies growing. Thousands and thousands of them. I don't know what that is, but look how many little arms it has all over it. It's insane. All right, I think we're about done with the sanctuary. We're headed back to the car. We spent a few hours here, and now we're gonna head back, and we're gonna head to our hotel near Los Breles. So if you look, here's a giant mesquite. That thing's probably, could be 500 years old, 1,000 years old, I don't know. Mesquites can live very long. But it was obviously a nurse tree for a long time, and now look at all these giant cardons that are growing up right around her base because she protected them throughout their whole life. There's a bunch of those fruits up there. So right here we have an ocotillo blooming. But what I've noticed about the ocotillos here is they have trunks, unlike the American ocotillos. So maybe they're different species. All right, well, that's about it for today's video. Please comment if you have any questions or concerns. I try to give feedback to all of you guys. And with that, have a great rest of your day.